Okay, so they had something similar to this that they called Reteaching in Unit 1, and they give you an example here to begin with, and they ask you some questions right across from that. And they're talking about compatible numbers, and we just talked about compatible numbers a few minutes ago, and that's just simply adding or subtracting numbers to a particular problem to make them easier to add or subtract. And then it says use mental math to add or subtract. So they don't want you to write these down. They just want you to use your brain. So the first thing I see is a 4 and a 6. That's going to be 1 right there. And the 8 and 23, that's going to be 31. Plus 1 more is 32. And then plus this one is 33. And then a 0.4 left over, so 33.4. So I just did that in my head. And I'll do the second one also. So this one I'm subtracting 9.9. Well, that's really close to 10. What's 27 subtract 10? Let me pull a stick here. Miss Armstrong, 27 subtract 10 is what? 27 subtract 10, nice try, is 17. And now, listen, it's 17, but I added 0.1 to make this a 10. So now that I know it's 17, I'm going to subtract 0.1. So I know it's going to be 16.9. And so you can do the other two on your own. So that's what they're talking about, using compatible numbers. All right, so this one is talking about estimating. We have 22.4 and 16.2 we're subtracting. And they made this, the 22.4, that's close to 20. 16 is close to 15 because they broke it down into fives. Fives are always kind of easier to add or subtract. And so they say it's about 5. And so that's what you're going to do with these. Estimating can be hard to grade because what one person estimates a number to be might be a little different than what somebody else might estimate it to be. So let's do these together. I think I know what I would estimate the first one to be, but let's see what you guys come up with here. Mr. Burns is not here. Let's see here. Mr. Siebold, these first two, what might you estimate those to be?
700.
Well, okay, but let's start with the individual numbers here. 358, what would you make that?
I would make the 8 10.
Well, what would you make this number right here?
360.
360, okay. And what would you make this number?
300.
Yeah, I think I would make it 300, okay. And then, so what's 360 plus 300?
360. 660.
660, correct. Okay. Let me see here. And if I call your name and you answer my question, go ahead and put up 10 points. Miss Powers, what would you estimate 15.1 to be? What's it really close to? A whole number, honey.
15.
Yeah, 15. Very good. So 15. And what would you make this one to be?
4.
4? I think you could. Or 5. I think a 5 is a little bit easier. And so 15 subtract 5 would be 10. Okay. And estimating, I mean, there's a big fudge factor. So, Miss McAnulty, yes.
Isn't it supposed to be like, because if it's 5 or larger, you round up, but if it's not, then you round down? That would be 4 instead.
Right. so you're asking a question about rounding. 5 or up, it would go up, or 4 or less, it would go down 1. So Miss Powers had said 4 at first, and I suggested 5. Now, to answer your question, we're estimating, not rounding. And so that's why I suggested a 5. Now, if she had used 4, would she have been wrong? No, because we're estimating. We're just getting close. That's why it's kind of hard for me as a teacher to grade a sheet that had maybe a bunch of numbers where you'd have to estimate, because you all might estimate a little differently. Some of you may have chosen 5. Some of you may have gone with 4, like Miss McAnulty and Miss Powers. Okay? Let's do one more. Let me see here. Mr. Long, number 3. What would you estimate the first one to be?
80.
Yeah, 80 also. I would too. So 80 plus, and the second one?
290.
290, okay. Or 2.9, okay. You could even say 3, but somebody might say 2.9 like you. And so that would be simply 82.9, which is fine. Or somebody might have just said 83, which is fine also. So anyways, I think you guys get the idea of estimating. So just keep in mind there is a difference between estimating and rounding. So use place value blocks to subtract 1.86. You have 1.86 and you're subtracting 0.95. So these large blocks, these represent a whole number 1. Okay? And then these lines here, they all represent a tenth. And so we're subtracting 0.95, so you need to subtract, so one of these here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 5 more, which they've got right here. And so they're just showing you what's left. So then it says add or subtract, use place value blocks for help. So here's what I want you guys to do. And I'm just going to ask right now, and I think this will probably make my point. I'm looking at about 25 students here. How many of you would actually use place value blocks to do one of these problems? So 1, 2, 3, 4 of you. Okay, so about 4 of you. Put your hands down, thank you. So actually more than I expected. All right, I would have thought most of you would just go ahead and do them. But some of you maybe use place value blocks, which is fine. So here's what we're going to do. There's not enough room for you to do all the place value blocks for all 4 of these. So I want everybody just to do this one, number 2. So we're going to X out those 3. So use place value blocks and to do those 2, or to do number 2, and we'll call it good. Miss McAnulty?
Do we have to do the place value blocks?
You have to do the place value blocks for this one right here. Okay? All right, next page. It says Lucy bought 2 point, looks kind of fuzzy to me here. 2.12 pounds of pears. Can you guys hear me back over there? Because that's really loud. Not really, even with my loud voice? We'll move up here then if you can't hear me. Lucy bought 2.12 pounds of pears and 3 pounds of apples. Find out how many more pounds of apples and pears Lucy bought. And again, it says use place value blocks to help. So I'm just going to pick one of these, and let's just do number 5. And I'm going to X out the rest of those. And I want to see the work for place value blocks right in here for number 5. Number 6. Talia measured 2 strings. The green string was 2.37 centimeters long. The blue string was 4 centimeters long. How many centimeters longer was the blue string than the green string? So you're going to have to find the difference which means what? Subtraction. Okay? All right, thinking habits. All right, think about these questions to help you model math. How can I solve the math problem? How can I use math, I know, to help solve the problem? How can I use pictures, objects, or an equation to represent the problem? And how can I use numbers, words, and symbols to solve the problem? All of you, I think, do this intuitively whenever you look at a math problem, and which one you may focus on is just going to depend on the student. As long as your answer is correct, I'm not concerned about which one of these you use or focus on. And it says, remember, a good model clearly shows how the quantities in the problem are related. So then it says here, Alberto ran 15.6 kilometers on Monday, 12.8 Tuesday, 6.5 Wednesday. Then it says Dennis ran. Now, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to underline this in red, because this is Alberto talking about. All right. Then it says Dennis ran 11.25 on Monday, 14.6 Tuesday, and 8 on Wednesday. So I'm going to underline Dennis here in blue so I don't get confused. Then it says who ran farther and how much farther. Okay, so we have to answer that question. And so they're asking you, it says, what do you need to find before you can solve the problem? Well, so this is kind of confusing here because they have a question, and I immediately would jump into answering the question by what? We're going to add each one of these up. So we need to total the miles each boy ran. And I said miles, actually it was kilometers. Then it says write 2 equations to model this problem, then solve the problem. Well, here's one equation. I'm going to do Alberto's. Okay? Here's the equation. I'm going to write 15.6 plus 12.8 plus 6.5 equals. That's an equation. And it says write equations to model this problem. Well, you guys can write the other equation and then actually solve it. You'd have to, when we are done with those 2 equations, then you need to answer who ran farther and how much farther. So you're going to have to see the difference between the 2. You're going to get 2 totals, and you're going to subtract one from the other. And you'll see how much further one boy ran over the other. All right? So, next page is the topic 2 assessment practice. And again, I'm going to give you guys a quiz tomorrow. And the quiz is similar to some of the problems we just did, and some of them you're about to do on your own. So I'm going to leave you guys to do these on your own, page 73 and 74. Okay? So I would first finish 71 and 72, and then do 73 and page 74 on your own. And just kind of quietly work on these.
What's for homework?
Well, I just described it to you. So work on these, and if you get them done in class, then you probably won't have any homework. All right, and if you need help, come on up.